Chosen one, this message has reached you not by chance but by divine orchestration. In the realm of spirit, there are no coincidences, only sacred timings and heaven-ordained alignments. You didn't just scroll your way here. You were guided, pulled by something unseen but deeply known. Something within you, older than memory, deeper than thought, recognized this vibration. Heaven has seen you quietly doing the work others avoided. You've been rebuilding from ruins, nurturing what was neglected, and carrying weight your ancestors never had the strength to face. And now, God is sending this confirmation. You are not just continuing the story, you are the new beginning. From the moment you entered this world, the atmosphere around you changed. You didn't simply arrive. You were dispatched into a spiritual assignment wrapped in human form. You didn't just inherit features or traditions. You inherited a divine blueprint, a holy mission to transform everything broken into something sacred. You are not just someone with potential. You are the fulfillment of promises whispered through tears, sown into the ground by generations who had nothing left but faith. You are their echo, their answer, their reward. You've wondered why your road has been so steep, why your emotions run so deep, why your nights have often felt longer than most. It's because you weren't walking for yourself alone. You were walking for an entire bloodline, for those who were silenced, for those who were broken, for those who had to bury their dreams in order to survive. What ended them was sent to you to end. You are the final stop for every curse, the first spark of a new covenant. Before we go any further, I want to pause and deeply thank every single soul who has sown into this message through super thanks. Your generosity isn't just financial, it's prophetic. It fuels the reach of these divine words and helps more chosen ones find their way back to themselves. Whether you've donated or not, please know this: you are appreciated, you are seen, and your presence here is a blessing in itself. If you've supported this journey, thank you. If you're simply here, receiving this word with an open heart, that too is sacred. I'm honored to walk this path with you. Now, take a sacred breath. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe, because this isn't just a video, it's a spiritual activation. It's a transmission encoded with the frequency of legacy, awakening, and restoration. If something inside you is already responding, if this message is vibrating in your chest, go ahead and drop 777 in the comments. That's not just a number, it's your confirmation code. It tells heaven, earth, and every watching spirit realm. I'm here. I've arrived. I remember who I am, and I accept the assignment. This message will unfold in 7 divine chapters, each one designed to awaken a different layer of your calling. Revisit this transmission as often as your soul needs, because with each encounter, more will be revealed. Each chapter will open doors within you that were sealed by pain, silence, and survival. But now, healing is unlocking what trauma tried to hide. So, are you ready to step into the fullness of your divine identity? Are you ready to not only break the curses but build the blessings? To not just survive the ruins, but become the restorer? Then let's begin. Your sacred legacy awaits. God's chosen ones, you were sent to restore what was broken in your bloodline. Chapter 1. The invisible burden you've always carried. Have you ever walked into a room and felt a strange, heavy presence, something no one spoke about, but you felt it anyway? Have you noticed the weight in your chest at family gatherings, even when people were smiling? The laughter might have sounded genuine, but your spirit heard something different. It felt the sorrow beneath the surface. the discomfort behind the jokes, the fear hiding behind tradition. Why were you the only one who seemed to sense it? Why did the pain call your name so early, so young, so relentlessly? Because, chosen one, you weren't just born into a family, you were assigned to a lineage. Long before you had language for it, you knew. You could feel the pressure of wounds that weren't yours, but lived in your body anyway. It came through in the tension between relatives, in the silence that followed certain names, in the stories that were never told, but always lived through reactions, habits, and inherited pain. You were born into patterns that didn't ask for your permission, but they still expected your participation. But you didn't just comply, you began to notice. And that's when everything changed. Why did you start asking questions others were afraid to ask? Why did their silence disturb you more than any noise ever could? Because your soul was awake, and that's not an accident. It's a calling. Even as a child, something inside you stirred when things didn't add up. You weren't trying to rebel, you were trying to rescue. But how do you rescue something you can't even see clearly? That's the holy paradox of your assignment. You were chosen to restore something that generations before you didn't have the tools, language, or strength to face. The trauma may not have started with you, but the healing must. As Romans 8:19 tells us, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Creation itself has been holding its breath for you to awaken to who you are and what you carry. You might have blamed yourself for being too emotional or too sensitive, but the truth is, your spiritual DNA is wired for higher frequencies. You're not weak, you're aware. You were never meant to numb out the way others did. You were born to feel deeply, because only deep feeling can lead to deep healing. You were designed to notice where things don't align with truth, love, and God's divine order. And isn't it strange how the one sent to heal the wound often becomes the scapegoat for its exposure? That's part of the pain of being chosen. You recognize dysfunction, not to condemn, but to correct. Yet the same family you're sent to heal may resist you, push you away, misunderstand your heart, and mislabel your intentions. That hurts, but it's part of the assignment. Even Jesus said in Matthew 13:57, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Chosen one, it's not personal, it's prophetic. Look at the story of Viola Davis. Before the awards and applause, there was deep poverty, abuse, and shame. But she didn't just rise out of it for herself. She carried her family's history on her back. She built a new legacy. Through her pain, she created space for ancestral redemption. That's what you're doing, whether the world sees it or not, whether your family understands or not. This invisible burden you carry shows up in your body too. The exhaustion that doesn't make sense, the anxiety that spikes in situations that seem normal to others, the pressure to keep the peace, be the glue, fix everything without breaking yourself, the guilt that creeps in when you dare to put your needs first. These aren't random symptoms, they're signs that you're carrying spiritual weight. But why you? Why now? Because God placed something in you that your ancestors could only pray would one day arrive. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, as declared in 1 Peter 2:9. You weren't just born, you were sent. Heaven trusted you with what others buried. That speaks volumes about your strength, even if you feel broken. What if I told you that your very presence in this bloodline is the evidence that God hasn't given up on it? What if your awareness, your voice, your tears are all sacred tools in heaven's plan to resurrect what sin, secrecy, and silence tried to destroy? Take a moment and look at someone like Trevor Noah. Born during apartheid in South Africa, the product of an illegal relationship between a black mother and a white father, his very existence challenged systems. He grew up hiding in plain sight, his identity considered a crime, but what was once a source of fear became his power. His voice, rooted in deep generational complexity, now bridges cultures and brings laughter and awareness to millions. Like you, he didn't just escape pain, he transformed it. Chosen one, you don't need to wait for a perfect moment or public validation. The work you're doing in silence, the decision to go to therapy, the prayer at midnight, the boundary you finally set, the toxic cycle you stopped repeating, that is holy, that is divine. Psalm 34:18 reminds us, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Your heartbreaks have never gone unnoticed by God. Every time you chose healing over hiding, heaven rejoiced. Every moment you resisted the urge to lash out or collapse into old coping mechanisms, you were stepping into your calling. Restoration is messy. It's not about appearing strong. It's about being faithful when no one sees your sacrifice. It's about crying but continuing, questioning but trusting, losing but still choosing love. That's where true spiritual authority is forged, not in fame but in fire. Look at Simone Biles. The world praised her as the GOAT of gymnastics, but few understood the spiritual strength it took for her to prioritize her mental health during the Olympics. By doing what looked like pulling back, she broke a cycle of silent suffering for generations of athletes. She chose truth over pressure, legacy over applause. Sound familiar? You weren't meant to carry this forever. You were meant to confront it, name it, and release it, to choose differently, to break the silence, to cry the tears that cleanse the wound, to love where there was once neglect, to protect what was once abandoned, to say what no one else could say. So, what happens next? Will you continue hiding your gift because others can't understand it? Or will you own your calling, even if it means walking alone sometimes? Galatians 6:9 encourages us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Chosen one, you're not just planting seeds for your life, you're planting them for those who came before you and those who will come after you. You are restoring what was lost, redeeming what was forgotten, rebuilding what was never finished. And yes, it hurts, but it also heals. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you shift the entire vibration of your lineage. Every time you say, "This ends with me," you set in motion a future where wholeness is possible, and you're not doing it alone. Heaven backs your every step. The burden didn't start with you, but it ends with you. Chapter 2. You were born different for a reason. Have you ever felt like you were a puzzle piece from a different box, surrounded by people who couldn't quite understand your shape, your edges, your depth? Have you ever looked around and silently asked yourself, why can't I just be like them? Not out of envy, but out of weariness. From the very beginning, something about you didn't blend, and that, chosen one, was never a flaw. It was a signature, a spiritual seal marking you as the answer to a prayer that was whispered generations ago. You've always known you weren't like the others, not better, just different. And that difference, though misunderstood by many, was heaven ordained. Why did you feel so deeply when others shrugged things off? Why did you sit with pain while others laughed it away? Why did injustice, no matter how small, bother you long after others moved on? The world may have told you that your questions were disruptive, but in truth they were prophetic. You were born with sight, and sight always disrupts systems built on blindness. In Jeremiah 1:5, God declares, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." This wasn't just a word for Jeremiah. It's a truth that pulses in your very being. You were set apart, not separated out of rejection, but sanctified for a higher purpose. When others ignored the tension in the family, you absorbed it. When others walked away from the uncomfortable truth, you walked toward it. You weren't trying to stir conflict. You were responding to an inner compass that pointed toward healing, even when the path was hard. That compass wasn't something you learned. It was something you carried. It was built into your soul. Think about it. How many times did you feel the shift in a room before anyone else noticed? How often did you weep without explanation, only to find out someone else was suffering in silence nearby? Why were you the one who caught the lie in someone's voice, the pain behind someone's smile, or the spiritual warfare cloaked in what others called normal? Because you weren't born to skim the surface, you were born to go deep. And in this shallow world, depth often gets labeled as too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense. That's what they called you. But heaven calls it sacred. You see, sensitivity is not weakness, it's radar. And you, chosen one, were born with spiritual sonar. That radar allows you to detect the subtle shifts in energy, in atmosphere, in people. You're a spiritual responder. That is not a curse, it's your anointing. Psalm 139 verse 14 reminds us, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Your makeup was deliberate. Heaven didn't miss a detail. When the world tried to label you, when your own family couldn't understand you, when your teachers told you to stop daydreaming or be realistic, it wasn't because you were broken. It was because you were beyond their categories, beyond their understanding, beyond the limited vision they had for their own lives. Your purpose simply could not be housed in ordinary expectations. Let's look at someone like Tyler Perry. Before he became a household name, he was homeless, living out of his car, writing plays that no one would produce, following a vision that no one else could see. People told him he was wasting his time, being too much, dreaming too big. But his sensitivity to storytelling, to pain, to redemption, that was his sacred gift. And now generations are healed through the art that was born out of his differentness. He didn't just overcome, he fulfilled a divine assignment. So are you. You were never meant to fit in. You were designed to reshape the environment around you. That's why, even now, conformity feels like betrayal. When you try to silence yourself just to make others comfortable, your soul resists. When you hide your spiritual gifts to blend in, your spirit grieves. Why? Because you weren't placed here to be accepted by the crowd. You were placed here to lead it out of darkness. And leadership that comes from the Spirit always starts with rejection from the familiar. Isaiah 61 calls out, Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. But how can you shine if you keep dimming your light to make others feel okay with staying in the shadows? They may have called you the black sheep, but in God's eyes, you are the golden thread, the one who was hidden in plain sight, the sacred spark buried in the bloodline, waiting for the moment of ignition. You are the breaker of generational silence, the rebuker of lies disguised as traditions, the restorer of the family's spiritual backbone. Have you noticed how the battles in your life began earlier than most? Why were you the one who faced emotional warfare before you had the language to defend yourself? Why were you rejected by the very people who should have protected you? Because your calling frightened the systems that wanted to keep your bloodline bound. But no matter how far you wandered or how misunderstood you felt, the call on your life never left you. It's why, even in your lowest moments, you couldn't shake the feeling that you were meant for more. It's why you feel an ache when you see injustice, a fire when you hear the truth, a holy discomfort when you're surrounded by dishonesty. That's not just intuition, that's remembrance. That fire in your belly, that's your assignment waking up. Like Misty Copeland, the first African-American principal ballerina at the American Ballet Theatre. She was told her body type wasn't right for ballet. She was called different, unfit, out of place. But she pressed forward. She turned her difference into distinction. Her presence changed the definition of what beauty, strength, and grace look like on stage. She didn't fit into their mold. She reshaped the mold. That is your destiny as well. You weren't created to follow a path. You were created to forge one. Chosen one. Your uniqueness is not an accident. Your emotions are not a weakness. Your questions are not rebellion. They are the evidence of your assignment. In Ezekiel 22:30, God said, "I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land." That's you. You are the one standing in the gap between what was and what will be, between who they were and who they could become, between curses and blessings. You are the intercessor, the revealer, the repairer of the breach. You were sent into your family not to follow the script, but to write a new one, to confront inherited lies, to dismantle systems of shame, to stop generational pain from metastasizing into the future, to say, it ends here, and it begins again, with truth, with love, with God. It is no coincidence that you feel most alive when you're aligned with purpose, and it's no accident that you've struggled with isolation, imposter syndrome, and even guilt for being too different. These are not signs that you're failing. They're signs that you're birthing something sacred. Oprah once said, "The reason I've been able to be so financially successful is my focus has never, ever for 1 minute been money." Her focus was always purpose. And in that purpose, everything else aligned. You don't have to chase acceptance. When you walk in your divine difference, everything you need will find you. So, if you've ever felt like your light was too bright for those around you, it's because you were never meant to be a lamp in a room. You were meant to be a lighthouse in the storm. If you've ever wondered why your family doesn't understand you, it's because you were sent ahead to show them what's possible when healing becomes the priority. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to redeem it. You are not here to be a prisoner of your pain. You are here to set others free from it. So let them call you different. Heaven calls you chosen. Chapter 3. Confronting the wounds that run deep. Have you ever wondered why certain pain seems to echo in your spirit, even though it didn't happen to you directly? Why you feel exhaustion in places others never touch? Why your heart carries sorrow that feels older than your lifetime? Could it be that you are not just processing your own pain, but channeling generations of unresolved grief? What if your tears are ancient? Chosen one, being sent to restore your bloodline is not a symbolic honor. It is a divine commissioning. This isn't about being the strongest by human standards. It's about being spiritually awake enough to recognize the chains others learned to live with, and bold enough to say, "Not on my watch." You weren't chosen to fix broken people. You were chosen to break spiritual strongholds. That distinction matters. Fixing focuses on symptoms. Breaking chains deals with the source. And heaven didn't send you here to perform quick fixes. You were sent to excavate spiritual roots and burn the rot at its foundation. Isaiah 61:1 affirms your purpose. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Sound familiar? That's you. But before you could become a healer, you had to face the wounds firsthand. And not just any wounds, the kind no one else dared to acknowledge. Pain passed down like a family recipe. Bitterness stirred in silence. Abandonment baked into behaviors. Shame folded gently into tradition. You felt it all, even though no one talked about it. How do you explain mourning? Something no one else admits is broken. You weren't imagining things. You were picking up on the echoes of trauma that had been left unspoken for generations. While others normalized the dysfunction, Your soul screamed that something wasn't right. That wasn't defiance, it was discernment. You were never meant to inherit the pain. You were sent to interrupt it. Have you ever asked yourself why you feel so heavy in places others feel light? Why some relationships drain you when they should feel nurturing? Why you often question yourself for emotions that seem unprovoked? That's not confusion, it's spiritual awareness. It's what happens when a chosen one steps into a family line that has never known what wholeness feels like. And you're not just holding space for yourself. You're standing at the collision point between what was and what could be, between the generations who coped and the generations who can be free, because you decided to confront what others avoided. Look at Viola Desmond, a name not as well known as Rosa Parks but equally powerful. In 1946 in Canada, she refused to leave a whites-only section of a movie theater. Her quiet defiance sparked a movement. But behind that moment was a lineage of women who suffered in silence. Viola didn't just confront a system, she confronted a silence, just like you are now. Chosen one, this is soul-level work. It doesn't just require intellect, it demands spirit. It requires you to sit in discomfort, to allow your tears to wash over decades of suppression, to cry the tears your ancestors were never allowed to cry. You were sent to do what they couldn't, to feel it all, face it all, and finally release it all. Psalm 147:3 promises, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. God is not watching from afar, He's working through you. Your healing is heaven's hands in action. But let's be honest, this journey is not without cost. You may lose your closeness with those still loyal to the illusion. You may be misunderstood by family members who believe silence equals peace. You may be mocked, labeled too much, or even blamed for stirring the pot. But you're not stirring anything, you're cleansing. You're detoxing the spiritual atmosphere so future generations can breathe freely. Why do those who refuse to heal often resent the ones who try? It's because your presence confronts their compromise. Your boundaries feel like betrayal to those who benefit from dysfunction. But that doesn't make you the villain. It confirms you're the vessel, the deliverer, the one God entrusted to carry a torch into the darkest corners of your lineage and set fire to the lies that have kept generations bound. You're not just healing from trauma. You're breaking soul ties with spiritual forces that have impersonated love, disguised themselves as loyalty, and embedded control into every act of caring. You are confronting spirits that don't shout. They whisper in religious language, hide in tradition, and thrive in shame. James Baldwin once said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And this is what you're doing. You're facing what has never been faced before. You're doing it tired. You're doing it uncertain, but you're still doing it. And that's what makes you dangerous to darkness. Have you ever noticed how your worst battles seem to come right before your biggest breakthroughs? That's because your trials weren't punishments. They were preparation. You weren't being punished, you were being processed. You had to walk through certain fires so you could recognize the heat in others and pull them out. You had to weep in silence so you could one day comfort others from a place of understanding, not theory. Romans 5:3-4 tells us, "We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." Every tear you've cried was not in vain. Every loss, every betrayal, every moment you almost gave up, it's all being transformed into healing power. Chosen one, you're not just healing yourself, you're healing on behalf of those who were never given the opportunity. You're healing for the mother who didn't have time to rest because she was surviving, for the father who was shamed into silence, for the siblings who internalized pain as personality, for your ancestors who were told their feelings were weakness. You are not only the hope of the past, you are the bridge to the future. You are the curse breaker. You are the lineage liberator. You are the walking prayer of those who never lived to see the promise. You are the fulfillment of their better dreams, the ones they couldn't dream out loud, but hoped would one day be born in someone bold enough to believe. You were born to be that someone. The fire in your chest, the ache in your spirit, the holy resistance that rises in you when cycles try to repeat, that is the evidence of your divine appointment. Now look at Malcolm X, not the headlines, but the man. Before he was a leader, he was a broken young man shaped by tragedy. He lost his father to racist violence, his mother to institutionalization, and his siblings to the cracks of society. But he didn't let the wound become his identity. He confronted it, and in doing so, he transformed his pain into a mission that empowered millions. This is what happens when chosen ones stop running from the wound and begin transforming it. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." You're not battling people, you're confronting principalities. So don't be surprised when your breakthrough causes spiritual pushback. That's a sign you're over the target. When resistance shows up, it's often proof that restoration is already in motion. If the wound could speak, what would it say to you? If your ancestors could speak, would they thank you for staying small? Or would they thank you for choosing courage over comfort? The wound runs deep, but the healing you carry goes deeper. You were sent to clean what others hid, to release what others gripped, to love with a depth that terrifies fear, to restore with a light that even darkness remembers. And when this chapter of healing is done, when the dust settles and the chains lie shattered, you will look back and say, "It was worth it." Because what you are building isn't just recovery, it is resurrection. Chapter 4. Spiritual Gifts Awaken Through Battle. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why the chaos started before you could even speak? Why you were targeted so young, before you had a chance to make mistakes, before you even understood the rules of life? Could it be that the battle began not because of what you did, but because of who you were destined to become? Chosen one, the warfare didn't start when you made a decision. It began when you took your first breath. You came into this world with spiritual coding that threatened the darkness. That's why the enemy launched his attacks early. He didn't wait for you to become strong. He tried to break you while you were still learning how to walk. But what he didn't understand, what he never saw coming, was that every strike would wake something sacred in you. Every heartbreak would unlock another layer of holy fire. Have you ever wondered why your rejection came so early and so often? Why betrayal seemed to find you even in safe spaces? Why your childhood was full of confusion, even when people around you pretended everything was fine? The truth is, the enemy could see what others couldn't. He could sense the prophetic fire growing inside of you. And his goal wasn't just to wound you, it was to distract you before your gifts could fully awaken. But he failed. You've always had an inner knowing, haven't you? Even before you had language to explain it, something inside of you just knew. You could feel the tension when no one spoke. You sensed the lie behind someone's smile. You picked up the pain of others like it was your own. What others called overthinking was really spiritual discernment in its early form. What they dismissed as too emotional was actually your empathic anointing reaching out to people who couldn't even articulate their pain. As 1 Corinthians 2:10 says, "These are the things God has revealed to us by His Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God." Your spirit was never shallow. That's why shallow people couldn't understand you. What you thought was a flaw was actually a feature. You weren't broken. You were built for a different dimension. You don't just feel, you decode. You don't just pray, you intercede. You don't just survive, you transform. Your solitude wasn't punishment. It was your sanctuary. God was teaching you in private what others would only understand in hindsight. Think about someone like John Newton, the man who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace. Before he became a spiritual leader, he was involved in the slave trade. But through trauma, storms, and a near-death experience, God awakened his conscience. His spiritual gift of conviction wasn't born in a pulpit. It was born in battle. And that battle gave the world one of the most powerful songs of redemption ever written. Chosen one, your gifts weren't meant to stay dormant. They were designed to be activated in adversity. You thought the delay in your life was a detour, but what if it was divine design? What if those seasons of isolation were heaven's way of pulling you aside to train you, refine you, and reveal your assignment without distraction? Your dreams aren't just dreams. They're messages wrapped in mystery. Your gut feelings aren't coincidences. They're spiritual alarms. Your emotional responses aren't weaknesses. They're sensors tuned to frequencies others can't hear. Romans 12:6 reminds us, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. Your grace is not random. Your gifts are not accidental. They are precise tools, divinely assigned for this generation. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong before it was visible? Have you ever felt pulled to pray for someone only to find out later they were under spiritual attack? That's not a lucky guess. That's prophetic perception. You're wired to move in realms unseen by human eyes. And that's why the warfare never made sense to others, because you were never just battling natural opposition. You were wrestling with spiritual forces. As Ephesians 6:12 teaches, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world. The battle wasn't personal, it was positional. It was trying to stop you before you stepped into your assignment. Your gifts don't flourish in comfort, they sharpen in crisis. Your prayer life didn't deepen because things were easy. It deepened when you were surrounded by confusion and had no one to turn to but God. Your discernment wasn't born in peace, it was forged in the fire of betrayal. You were broken, not to be destroyed, but to be reconstructed with heaven's blueprint. Take, for example, Harriet Tubman. She wasn't just an escapee from slavery, she became a prophetic deliverer. Her dreams and visions led her through the Underground Railroad. Her spiritual radar was so sensitive that she could detect danger without ever seeing it. God sharpened her gifts through pain, through escape, through solitude. Sound familiar? Chosen one, you were born into a spiritually dry bloodline, but you carry a well of living water inside you. You were sent into confusion, but gifted with clarity. You were surrounded by silence, but heaven gave you a voice that breaks chains. And that's why some people couldn't stay. That's why certain environments fell apart. You outgrew spaces that were never designed to handle your anointing. Not because you were arrogant, but because your gifts needed room to breathe. John 14:26. Promises, the Holy Spirit will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. That whisper you hear in your stillness, that's not imagination. That's divine instruction. And your stillness? That's your strategy. You're not lazy. You're listening. You're not retreating. You're receiving. Do you ever wonder why your presence shifts rooms? Why your energy unsettles pretenders? It's because chosen ones don't enter a space. They shift the spiritual atmosphere of it. You carry a vibration that confronts anything that doesn't align with truth. You aren't just sensitive. You're spiritually weaponized. Look at someone like Chadwick Boseman. Quiet, private, graceful, yet powerful. While battling cancer in silence, he continued to pour his gift into the world, filming iconic roles and inspiring millions. His presence carried spiritual weight. His pain refined him. He didn't just act, he activated something in his audience. Like you, his light wasn't for attention, it was for impact. Chosen one, you are not just intuitive, you are a messenger. You are not just a feeler, you are a decoder. You don't just survive, you transmute pain into purpose. And with every trial you've endured, heaven has been sharpening your sword. So don't downplay your gifts. Don't apologize for your vision. Don't second-guess the messages God gives you in your dreams, in your stillness, in your instincts. You weren't just born for this, you were anointed for it. And with that anointing comes responsibility. Your gifts are not toys, they are tools. They are not meant to make you look impressive, they are meant to make others whole. Every gift you carry is heaven's answer to someone else's silent prayer. You are the delivery system for blessings your ancestors only dreamed of. You were hidden, not because you were forgotten, but because you were preserved. God was protecting what He was perfecting. Now, it's time to rise, not just as a survivor of battles, but as a spiritual warrior armed with authority. You carry keys in your spirit, keys to break curses, keys to restore families, keys to unlock destinies that have been sealed shut for too long. So let me ask you, chosen one, will you continue to question your gift, or will you step into it boldly, knowing that everything you've endured was sacred preparation? Will you keep dimming your light, or will you shine unapologetically, knowing that your light is someone else's lifeline? The answer is already in you. The awakening has already begun. You are not just part of the story. You are the divine interruption. Chapter 5. The Rejection That Built You. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and still felt invisible? Have you ever wondered why you were always left out of the invitations, the conversations, the celebrations, even when you gave everything you had? Why did it seem like no matter how much you loved, how deeply you cared, or how hard you tried, there was always a gap you couldn't cross? Chosen one, the reason you were rejected wasn't because something was wrong with you. It was because something divine was on you. They didn't just leave you out. They left you questioning whether you were ever meant to belong. And that question didn't just hurt. It haunted you. But here's the truth the enemy tried to keep hidden. You were never meant to fit in. You were created to stand apart. Your soul was not sent to conform, it was sent to confront. And rejection, though painful, was the scalpel God used to carve you into someone set apart. Psalm 118:22 whispers the irony of your journey. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Yes, you, the one they overlooked, laughed at, pushed aside. You are the very foundation upon which new legacies are being built. You were misunderstood because you carried something your environment wasn't ready for. They called you too quiet when you were learning to observe, too emotional when you were feeling what others buried, too intense when you were tapping into the Spirit, too distant when you were learning how to hear the voice of God above all the noise. But let me ask you, how can someone teach you to be something they've never seen before? How can those confined by the system recognize the one sent to rebuild it? They didn't reject you. They rejected the light within you that reminded them of the truth they were avoiding. Rejection is rarely personal. It's prophetic. And so the dismissals began early. They didn't just criticize your dreams, they tried to kill them in their infancy. They mocked your vision. They rolled their eyes at your bold prayers. But what they didn't realize was that God was listening, and God took it personally. In John 1:11 we read, "He came to his own, and his own did not receive him." Jesus himself was rejected by the very people he came to love and save. So how can you expect anything different when you're walking in his anointing? Like Jesus, like Joseph, like many chosen ones before you, rejection wasn't meant to destroy you. It was the furnace where your anointing was purified. What felt like abandonment was actually protection. What looked like exile was preparation. Look at the life of Fred Rogers. Yes, Mr. Rogers. A gentle soul in a television world of loud voices and flashy distractions. He was told he was too soft, too slow, too boring for television, but he didn't change his spirit to fit the world. He made the world slow down to meet him. Now, his legacy is one of healing, empathy, and transformation. What others called a flaw, God used as a frequency of peace. Just like with you. Have you noticed how rejection actually refined your perception? How the absence of support taught you to lean on God like never before? That's not weakness. That's spiritual maturity. When they left you, it forced you to find the only presence that would never leave. Rejection trained you to recognize authenticity. It taught you to hear the still, small voice, even when surrounded by noise. Let me ask you, what if the doors they slammed in your face were never meant to be yours in the first place? What if the very people who left you behind were divinely instructed to do so, because their presence would have contaminated your promise? Chosen one, they weren't rejecting the human you. They were rejecting the oil on your life. Rejection has a way of sharpening what comfort would have softened. Every no was heaven's redirection. Every betrayal was a blade. Painful, yes, but also precise. God was using those cuts to surgically remove everything and everyone who could not go where you're being called. And though it hurt, you now see, there is nothing more dangerous than taking wounded people into your destiny just to avoid walking alone. Joseph understood that. Betrayed by his own blood, thrown into a pit, sold, falsely accused, imprisoned. From the outside, it looked like tragedy, but spiritually, it was divine choreography. Genesis 50:20 reveals the secret Joseph understood in hindsight. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. That's your story too. Rejection was never about who walked away. It was about who you were becoming. Take a look at Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm to a shark attack. She was told her surfing career was over. People pitied her, counted her out. But through persistence, prayer, and unshakable purpose, she returned to competition and won. Her story didn't just inspire, it transformed people. Rejection didn't end her path, it unveiled it. Chosen one, you're not here to chase those who misunderstood you. You're here to build what they couldn't imagine. You're not here to earn their applause. Your life is the applause. Every step you take toward purpose is heaven's rebuttal to their rejection. That's why you must forgive them, not for their sake, but for yours. Because bitterness is an anchor, and you can't fly while you're still tied to what hurt you. Forgiveness is not approval of their actions, it's a spiritual strategy to sever the soul tie that would keep you bound to yesterday. Luke 6:22 comforts you in this. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil, because of the Son of Man. That blessing is yours. You've outgrown their shallow validations. You no longer need their watered-down approval. You were refined by fire, purified by pain, and positioned by grace. You weren't abandoned. You were set apart. You weren't too much. You were precisely measured for this exact assignment. And when the time is right, your purpose will speak for itself. Do you think David's anointing disappeared just because his brothers ignored him in the field? Do you think being overlooked by men disqualified him from being chosen by God? Absolutely not. When Samuel came to anoint the next king, David wasn't even invited to the selection. Yet God said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." 1 Samuel 16:12. You are the one. The environment that tried to shrink you will one day marvel at what God has done through you. The very people who whispered, "Who do they think they are?" will witness your elevation in real time, and you won't even need to clap back. Your fruit will testify for you. Do you feel the shift yet? The moment when rejection no longer feels like a wound, but a weapon, a divine tool that carved you into something unstoppable. Let's consider Ava DuVernay. She didn't direct her first film until she was 32. She faced rejection after rejection from an industry that didn't want to hear stories told through her lens. but she refused to shrink her vision. Eventually, she became the first black woman to direct a film nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Rejection didn't break her, it built her voice. Chosen one, so it is with you. They didn't reject a misfit, they rejected a masterpiece. They didn't walk away from a burden, they walked away from a blessing. You were never their curse, you were the cure. You were never the problem. You are the pattern breaker, the cycle disruptor, the walking answer to generations of spiritual warfare. And when all is said and done, your story will declare one eternal truth. God builds his greatest vessels out of rejection. Chapter 6. You're the answer to ancestral prayers. Have you ever felt as if your life carried a weight far greater than your years? Have you ever asked yourself, why do I feel the pain of things I never lived through? Could it be that you're not just living for yourself, but for generations who never got the chance to become what they dreamed? Chosen one, long before your first breath, long before your name was known on earth, heaven already knew who you were. You weren't just born, you were summoned, and not by coincidence, but by covenant. You are the divine response to cries that echoed through generations, cries that weren't heard in temples or pulpits alone, but in prison cells, on plantations, behind kitchen sinks, and in the stillness of night when a mother held back tears so her children wouldn't hear her breaking. There were grandmothers who rocked in creaking chairs, whispering prayers into the dark because their voices had been silenced in the daylight. Their words may have seemed small to the world, but to heaven, they were thunder. There were fathers whose hands were calloused from endless labor, who bowed their heads not out of defeat, but reverence, praying with quiet desperation for deliverance they didn't live long enough to see. And still, those prayers lived. Revelation 5:8 reminds us, each one had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people. Your ancestors' prayers were not lost, they were preserved. And you, chosen one, are the incense made flesh, the fragrance of their hope, the living answer to their pleading. So why do you feel the ache in your spirit that words can't explain? Why do you sense injustice before others even notice it? Why do you sometimes cry without knowing why? Because their tears live in you. Their longing lives in you. You were sent with the key to unlock what they could not. What they planted in pain, you are harvesting in purpose. Look at someone like Amanda Gorman, the youngest inaugural poet in US history. Her performance at the 2021 inauguration wasn't just poetic, it was prophetic. She stood on a stage that generations before her were barred from, but in that moment she carried not just her words, but the echoes of black poets, writers, and truth-tellers who were silenced. That is your role too. You are not just a name in your family line. You are its divine rewrite. You carry stories that were never told. You embody strength that was only prayed for. You walk in rooms your bloodline never thought it would enter. And that's not ego, that's assignment. So, what are you doing with the access they never had? What are you building with the healing they never received? Can you feel them cheering you on in the unseen? Because they are. Heaven is not the only realm watching you. The ancestors are watching too, and their hope rides on your yes. In Hebrews 12:1, we're reminded, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders. That great cloud includes them, those who never lived to see the dream fulfilled, but sowed seeds of hope anyway. You are that hope incarnate. Many of them didn't have language for generational trauma or spiritual gifts, but you inherited both. You inherited their strength, their silent courage, their soul's wisdom. Their resilience coded itself into your DNA. They may not have known the terms, but their survival was the altar where your destiny was formed. Do you ever wonder why you see spiritual patterns so clearly while others are numb to them? Why your spirit can't tolerate what others ignore? It's because you were sent not just to notice the cycles, but to break them. You are the voice they couldn't raise, the roar they had to swallow, the healer they didn't have. You are the bridge between their bondage and your family's freedom. That's why your path has never been easy. Like Sojourner Truth, you were called to speak into atmospheres that never expected to hear your voice. A former slave with no formal education, she stood before crowds demanding truth and justice. Her name wasn't just a title, it was her mandate. And you too carry a mandate, to speak where silence has ruled, to rise where generations were kept down, to finish what they were forced to abandon. You are the divine interruption to a line of pain. You are the turning point in your family story. You are the child they dreamed of, but never met. And now the question remains, will you rise fully into what they saw in you from the spirit realm? Isaiah 58:12 declares, "Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings." That title belongs to you. Repairer, restorer, rebuilder, rewriter. Do you realize how rare you are? And with that rarity comes weight. You carry more than memories. You carry blueprints. You're not just creating peace, you're fulfilling prophecy. Every time you choose rest instead of hustle, you are healing for ancestors who never got to stop working. Every time you speak up for yourself, you're restoring dignity to those who were silenced. Every time you love yourself, you're undoing generations of shame and fear. But the cost is real. Sometimes the weight of this calling will feel overwhelming. You'll feel isolated, misunderstood, too deep for shallow spaces, too awake for people still spiritually asleep. But don't shrink. Don't numb your sensitivity just because others aren't ready to feel. Don't mute your message just because others are afraid of the truth. Don't hide your light just because darkness looks comfortable. You weren't sent to fit in. You were sent to fulfill. Your very existence is an act of spiritual justice. Think about Malala Yousafzai, the young Pakistani girl who was shot by the Taliban simply for advocating girls' education. She didn't let trauma silence her. Instead, she became the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Her journey honors the voices of young girls who never got to speak. Just like you, her life is the answer to a collective cry. You are their reparation, their redemption, their revenge against systems that tried to erase them. And every time you heal, thrive, speak, rest, rise, lead, and love, you rewrite history, not just for yourself, but for them. Let me ask you again. What if your success is not about you at all? What if it's about fulfilling a spiritual contract signed in tears by the ones who came before? You were never just next in line. You are the new line, the holy divergence, the chosen blood that carries divine fire, the one sent when the earth could no longer bear the cries of the past. And now the angels rejoice, not just because you were born, but because you remembered who you are. So rise, chosen one. Let your life be the song they never got to sing. Let your joy be the laughter they never dared to release. Let your abundance be the answer to their prayers of provision. Let your spiritual strength be the shield they never got to wield. Let your purpose be their promised land. Your name is not just your own. It's a name heaven wrote in response to generational intercession. You are the visible fruit of invisible prayers. You are the culmination of faith that refused to die. Walk boldly, heal loudly, love deeply, because you, chosen one, are the answer. Chapter 7, Restoration is Your Legacy. Have you ever paused long enough to wonder what your name will mean when you're no longer here? Not in the way the world defines legacy, with plaques or trophies, but in the way heaven measures impact. Through the hearts you've helped heal, the chains you've broken, and the futures you've made possible. You see, chosen one, your journey isn't just about ending what was toxic. It's about beginning what is sacred. You weren't sent here just to expose the darkness. You were sent to build the light. You're not just a wrecking ball to dysfunction. You are the master builder of restoration. You're not only dismantling old strongholds, you are laying the first sacred stones of a foundation that generations after you will stand upon. This is more than personal growth. This is generational architecture. This calling over your life was never about survival alone. You were chosen to transform. You were anointed to heal what others were too afraid to speak of. You were sent to shine light into rooms that have sat in darkness for generations. Your presence was meant to confront what your family learned to tolerate. You were born to speak life where silence once ruled, to bless where bitterness had set up camp, to love where fear had built a fortress. You're not just a breaker of patterns, you are a planter of gardens. You are sowing seeds of peace, wholeness, honesty, and divine order into a soil that has long cried out for relief. Your work is proof that God doesn't just uproot what's harmful, He revives what's holy. This isn't just about what ends with you, it's about what begins through you. You are rewriting the emotional code of your entire bloodline. No longer will strength be defined by silence. No longer will emotion be mistaken for weakness. No longer will pushing through be considered the only path to honor. You are building a legacy where expression is not punished but welcomed, where healing is not a last resort but a way of life, where love is not assumed but spoken aloud with boldness, where forgiveness is not withheld but practiced like prayer, where children are raised not to suppress their feelings but to understand them. You are re-educating your lineage, spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. You are teaching them that the past can be honored without being repeated. And don't ever forget how you got here. You didn't arrive at this place of power by accident. You wrestled your way through battles that no one else in your family could see. You stood in spiritual storms and didn't crumble. You wept in silence, fasted in secret, and stayed faithful when quitting would have been easier. You learned how to speak to God when everyone else was speaking against you. You held the line when generational darkness tried to pull you under. And now, the anointing you carry isn't just covering you, it's saturating the bloodline. Because of your obedience, the spiritual climate around your family is changing. 2 Corinthians 4:17 reminds us, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Your pain has never been pointless. Your struggles have never been in vain. You've been trading ashes for beauty this entire time, and now your hands are full of seeds, holy ones. And you're not just scattering them, you're planting them intentionally. Every act of love you give, every truth you speak, every prayer you whisper, it is spiritual seed that will one day blossom into freedom for someone else in your family. Think about the work of Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. He didn't just fight legal battles, he fought spiritual ones. He stood for justice in places where injustice had deep roots. And his legacy isn't only written in court documents. It's written in the lives of families who were healed, restored, and dignified through his vision. You're doing that same kind of work, not in the headlines, but in the spiritual realm. You are restoring honor where there was shame, reclaiming peace where there was pain, and resurrecting truth where lies once ruled. The restoration you're building isn't flashy, it's foundational, and it will outlive you. You are what it looks like when heaven touches earth quietly, but with lasting force. This is priestly work. This is spiritual governance. You are the bridge between the generational pain that preceded you and the generational wholeness that will follow. You are not just a chain breaker, you are a chain replacer. The shackles of addiction, fear, codependency, emotional abandonment, and generational shame are being replaced with structure. Sacred, sturdy, heaven-ordained structure. The curses are giving way to covenant. Zechariah 8:12 proclaims, "The seed will grow well, the vine will yield its fruit, the ground will produce its crops, and the heavens will drop their dew." That is what's happening in your life now. The spiritual ground has shifted because of your surrender. Where there was once spiritual drought, there is now divine dew. Where there were weeds of despair, there are now roots of righteousness. You are cultivating a future your ancestors only dreamed of, and your descendants will one day thank you for. Look at the example of Jose Andres, a world-renowned chef who turned his skills into a global mission. He founded World Central Kitchen, feeding millions during disasters and war. His legacy isn't culinary, it's compassion. He created something sustainable out of a passion most would have kept for profit. You too are taking what others call your softness, your discernment, your deepness, and using it to build something immortal. Not just systems, but spiritual systems of safety, restoration, and truth. Chosen one, you're not just restoring your story, you're rewriting your entire family's relationship with identity, emotion, love, and God. You're showing them that trauma can stop here. That healing doesn't have to be earned, it can be chosen. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's warfare. That truth-telling doesn't destroy a family, it saves it. And every step forward you take, every generational lie you refuse to repeat, every inner vow you shatter becomes the foundation for something breathtaking. A legacy of love, a lineage of liberty, a family tree rooted in faith and flourishing in favor. Psalm 102:18 declares, "Let this be written for a future generation, that a people not yet created may praise the Lord." Your obedience is creating stories that haven't even been lived yet. You are giving language to those who've been voiceless, and you're giving vision to those who've only known survival. Restoration is no longer just a concept, it's your spiritual inheritance. It's in your breath, your decisions, your resilience, your prayers. It flows through your voice when you speak life into a broken situation. It flows through your silence when you choose peace over pettiness. It flows through your stillness when you choose to rest in God's timing instead of rushing into the world's chaos. You are no longer just part of your bloodline. You are heaven's fingerprint within it. You are the chapter no one expected. The plot twist the enemy never saw coming. The one who turned ruins into restoration and pain into purpose. Your name will not be remembered for what you accumulated, but for who you freed. You will not be celebrated because you were perfect, but because you were faithful to the assignment, to the process, and to the God who chose you to carry it out. So walk boldly, chosen one. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. Don't soften your truth to keep the peace. Don't downplay your healing just because others don't understand the pain it took to get here. You are the restoration your family line prayed for. You are the evidence that God rewrites history, not with thunder, but with obedience. And when it's all said and done, may your legacy echo one truth through every heart you touch. Restoration wasn't just your assignment, it was your legacy. Chosen one, if you've made it to this moment, reading these words, feeling their resonance in your soul, it's because you know deep within, this was never just content, this was confirmation, a divine reminder. You weren't merely born into your family, you were sent into it with precision and purpose. Your life is the exhale of 1,000 prayers, the fulfillment of faith your ancestors never got to see. You were chosen to not just carry the name, but to redefine what it means. And through your healing, through your courage, through your unwavering pursuit of truth, you're restoring more than just people. You're restoring identity, dignity, direction, legacy. I want to take a sacred pause and thank you, not just for watching, not just for listening, but for walking this journey. for saying yes to the inner work when the outer world didn't understand, for showing up again and again, even when your soul was weary. You're not alone in this, and you never will be. This is a collective awakening, and your presence here is proof that heaven is still writing through willing hearts. If you feel led, you can support this message and help it reach more chosen ones through the Super Thanks feature below. Whether you're able to donate or not, know this deeply. I see you, I honor your journey, and I am profoundly grateful for your spiritual companionship. Your support, financial, emotional, or energetic, is sacred. Whether you sow a seed or simply send love, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. May divine favor chase you down in every area of your life. May the restoration you're building return to you tenfold. May your nights be filled with peace, your steps guided by clarity, and your legacy sealed with love and protection. I speak blessings over your bloodline, over your dreams, and over every sacred yes you've whispered in the dark. You are not just breaking chains, you are birthing a new lineage, and that chosen one is something the world will never forget.